know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose one year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. This week's episode is a Patreon-sponsored episode. And before we get into all of that, if you too would like to sponsor an episode of the podcast where you get to choose the album that we devote an entire episode to, go to patreon.com/punklautopod and sign up for the $10 tier. It's a one-time $10 donation, and that gets you an entire episode dedicated to pretty much whatever you want, within reason. We have some veto rights, but they're really fun. We got 2 of these lined up, and then I think we got 2 more after that lined up too. So we got plenty of content coming your way when it comes to Patreon sponsored stuff. We'll try and space them out so it's not Patreon content every single week. But if $10 isn't your thing and you want to go a little cheaper, you can sign up at the $1 tier and get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. Last week we did a chart dive on the year 1988, and that's one of the few charts we have left that we have yet to really cover in depth. So
yeah, we've hit the 80s charts a lot.
Yeah.
So we kind of don't have a lot of options whenever we go back to the 80s for Patreon content. Though we can always do the Billboard charts. That's been something we've done in the past.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the Billboard charts have a very different mood than these album charts do. So I don't know. Once we've done all of the album charts, it kind of feels like I don't know what to do to replace those. I mean, we could just strictly do Billboard charts, but yeah, doesn't quite feel the same. But I don't know what else we could even replace it with. You can also check out the newest episode of The Comps That Made Us, which is a little solo series I've done sporadically over the last few months. I did one on a compilation cassette that we had growing up called Sauce, a Tasty Mix. And Dylan and I were talking about it a little bit on the Patreon, but Dylan didn't really have any memory of that cassette at all.
I don't remember it. We had it?
Mm-hmm.
I have no memory of that one. Wasn't one that we listened to very much.
No, which we didn't have a ton of tapes growing up until like started getting a little older and actually like asking for music as like Christmas and birthday presents. So like whatever tapes we had before that were kind of just given to us. I mentioned it on there. We had the Coming Out of Our Shells, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles concert album that they did, and also the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 soundtrack with Baltimore's Jungle Boy on it. And then like it was that Sauce cassette. We had a like MTV Presents Cherry 7 Up cassette as well, which has like a Bon Jovi song on it. I don't know if you remember that one either.
I kind of remember that one.
Like a pink case. And then like we had some stuff that was like taped, like, you know, blank tapes that were taped on, but I can't really recall what a lot of those were. So yeah, it wasn't one we played a lot, mainly because it wasn't particularly good, but it was interesting.
Yeah. And I guess we didn't have a lot of tapes generally just because of we would have started having our own music, like not just listening to whatever our parents were listening to, like actually having our own music to listen to at a point where CDs were pretty fully established and like not that much more expensive than the tape.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember what year I got my first CD player. 97, maybe 96, 97, something like that. One of the first CDs I got was the Eve 6 first, self-titled. Yeah, that seems right? That's like a 97 album, I believe. Yeah, so we had a handful of other tapes as well, but yeah. I feel like most of the tapes we would get later was just to have them in the car, because the car we had at the time had a tape player in it. So that was like why we had like the Audio Adrenaline albums on tape.
Yeah.
But yeah, not a ton of tapes. But yeah, it wasn't one we listened to a lot, but I found a lot of interesting stuff about all of the music on there, honestly. Like Jesus Jones is the first track on there. There's a Black 47 song on there. It's like the very last track on there, the Celtic punk band. And then like, what else? World Party doing a Lennon and McCartney cover, but it was like a song they wrote and gave away before the Beatles. Very weird. And then there was a shoegaze band on there from like On Creation Records called Adorable. Very obscure shoegaze band. Just a lot of interesting stuff on that tape, and it's just weird to like have that as a kid. I don't know. It just seems odd, but it was fun digging into those. So check that out there, and then I'll be continuing my Joan Jett series as well over on the Patreon. So yeah, a lot of content over there. And I even thought up another idea, and I was just like, why do I keep thinking of ideas? I don't have time to execute all of them. But yeah, patreon.com/punklautopod. And yeah, before we get going, we had to skip a week last week due to some illnesses. But prior to you getting sick, and probably why you got sick.
Probably the reason I got sick.
You went and saw The Damned.
Yeah. I saw them at the Fonda in Hollywood. Went with old bass player of the band, which was kind of funny because I thought that he was maybe more of a fan of them than he was when I had asked. But he was like, he was saying that he really only had like one greatest hits collection by them. And it's the one that has, he sent me a picture of it, but it has like a lot of the singles, but also the B-sides from the singles. So a lot of the covers that they did on some of those early singles, which is kind of an interesting best of to have for a band. So he wasn't like super familiar with their stuff, but I think he'd kind of, listened to some of it kind of to prepare for the show. But it was a good show. I'm really glad I saw them. I was kind of on the fence at first, but like once seeing what the lineup was going to be, they're pretty much guaranteed to get a lot of their classic records material. I was like, yeah, that should be good. They had the Avengers open, which was kind of funny. I was like, oh, I've seen them.
Yeah.
Not great. They were better this time than I remember them being. I feel like maybe they've tightened up. The songs stood out a little more to me seeing them this time. They smartly changed the lyrics of the one song that has a racial slur in it. I think is not what they did last time we saw them.
Yeah, and they did like a preamble before they did it too.
Yeah.
And
like explaining what they meant by it.
Change it. They must have gotten enough shit for it. Like people are just like, hey, come on. We get it. We know what you mean, but come on. It's 2024. Let's switch things up here.
And the Damned were great. They played a really good set list. Really had no complaints. There's only like 2 new songs, and they were good songs. Like honestly, they felt like classic Damned songs. Like I didn't have any problems with them playing those couple of new songs. They sounded really good. They're really, really good energy, really fun, really like seem like they're having fun the whole time they're playing too, which really comes across in the performance. Like Dave sounds great.
Yeah.
Like his voice sounds great live. I think he's got a good voice, knows what he's doing, kind of maintains it pretty well. Has really good stage presence. I mean, he like doesn't stand still. He's still like that. Because, I mean, I've seen classic footage of them, and he's, like, running all over the stage and all over the place. Like, he still is walking around the stage the whole time, unscrews his big, goofy, 50s microphone from the Elvis microphone from the stand and walks around with it. But, yeah, I mean, he was just all over the place, all over the stage. Captain Sensible's goofy, as goofy as you expect him to be. It was good. It was a really enjoyable show. I'm really glad I went. It's definitely one of the best performances I've seen of the classic punks that I've seen, of the few that are left still going.
I was gonna say, who have you seen that qualifies as the classic punks?
What, X, Stiff Little Fingers?
Yeah.
Which those were good. They were good too. But
yeah,
I think Damned is just like the Damned have just a little bit more of like a stage presence in their performance.
Yeah, and it feels very much like it could be one of the last chances to see them because, they did the final Australia tour that they like called the final Australia tour. Now that might just been because Australia's so hard to get to, especially from England.
Yeah.
And maybe a little easier to get to the States, but I wouldn't be surprised if they just kind of like, I feel like if they were going to do one last run of the US, they would tell people to. He's like, this will be it, because they told us about Australia. So they'll probably tell us when they're done with the US as well.
Yeah.
Maybe Australia's just a pain in the ass to get in, and that's why they're like, fuck this continent, we're leaving. We're not coming back.
You have to rent all your gear and shit. Like, yeah. It's so far.
So you think you got COVID there, or do you think you caught it at your show that you played?
I feel like it was most likely the Damned show. It was pretty crowded. Like I would not even be surprised at all if I caught it from the people that were standing directly in front of us. They were sitting at some tables that were like reserved tables, and they were kind of funny. The audience was mostly older people, as you would expect. It wasn't too much like, it wasn't the most interesting crowd watching, but we were up in the balcony area, but the people directly in front of us were like already pretty buzzed drunk by the time we got there. We got there like, and I don't even think we got there before the Avengers. No, the Avengers had been playing like maybe a couple of songs. I don't think we got there. It wasn't even like halfway through their set, because we saw quite a bit of their set. And they were this couple, and there was like one other guy who was there at first, but then he walked away. I don't know. Maybe he was sitting somewhere else or had a seat somewhere else. But like the woman was pretty into the Damned. Like she definitely knew some of the songs, singing along, would get really excited when they would play certain songs. But the guy that was with her, he was just like middle-aged, bald dude with like the wraparound shades on top of his head the whole time. And he looked like he didn't give a shit. Definitely he got dragged along. And he kept getting up. He would get up, he would go smoke, and then like maybe he'd get a drink. He had quite a few drinks while we were there. But there was this one point where I was looking over his shoulder. He was typing on his phone, but he was in the contacts app in his phone, and he's just like drunkenly, slowly typing someone's name in, and then he types in their phone number, and then he goes down to the little notes section where you can just like leave it. I guess you can put a note about the contact. I guess if, like, don't call at X hours, whatever reminders you want to give yourself for calling someone. And he's typing in the notes on the contact that he's creating in his phone. I think he thought he was texting them. Because he's like typing, "Let me know if you want to see Alice Cooper. Love you," whatever. And then like saved the contact. So he just like added someone to his phone. Half drunk, trying to text them. Definitely didn't actually send the message that he thought he was sending. And then they left like halfway through the Damned. Like they didn't even stay the whole time.
Weird.
It was weird. It's like, you guys like reserved a table.
Did this show continue to confirm the audience looks like the band theory that you've got?
No, this one, yeah, there wasn't as many people there that looked like they were members of the Damned.
I mean, I guess there's like,
which is probably hard to do because
not a lot of vampire-looking people or
whatever Captain Sensible is.
Berets and striped shirts and Angora sweaters.
Tall, curly-haired, weird-looking guys. No, this seemed like a pretty normal crowd. It didn't have the members of the band in the audience effect, but I wasn't down in the pit. Maybe those people were down there. I don't know. I was up in the not cheap seats because they're the same price, which if I'd have known that it wasn't going to be like as good of a view, I probably would have just gone with the floor. It was like, I was a little concerned when we got there. I was like, uh-oh, because it was like floor and then balcony, and the balcony had like raked seating that was completely full by the time we got there. And then like a little whatever mezzanine above that or whatever. We had a couple of tables along the rail, and then just kind of like flat standing room. If you were any further back than we were up there, you wouldn't have seen anything. So like, I'm really glad we got the little spot that we did, looking at, with the people at the table sitting down. They're just enough out of your view that you could see the stage really well from there. But any further back and you wouldn't have been able to see. So I don't know. If I go to that venue again, I think I'll just get the floor tickets because they were the same price.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. It's weird that they even bothered having separate. If they're the same price, having separate, you should just be like, you can go up there if you want. That should be how it is. Like, yeah, like most clubs, you just like, you can go upstairs and stand on the balcony, but you just got to get there in time. But so this week's episode, it is a Patreon sponsored episode, and it is brought to us by our good friend of the show, Dave Brown, the host of One Band, 5 Songs. Excellent podcast. and he gave us a big list of records to choose from, and we kind of went through and we looked to see what we think would be most interesting to talk about. And the one we kind of landed on was released in the year 1988. And before we get into the record, we wanted to take a look at the punk charts of 1988, at least according to rateyourmusic.com. For this one, I actually threw in the albums and the EPs. We skipped over a lot of the punk stuff when we did the chart dive on the Patreon, specifically so that we could have something to talk about here. And number one punk record of 1988 is Daydream Nation by Sonic Youth.
I guess that would be the one Sonic Youth record I would want to listen to.
You'd rather listen to that over Goo?
Yeah, what I've heard of it, I think I would enjoy it more.
I don't know if I've ever tried to listen to this record. I don't think I like any Sonic Youth. I don't think I'm capable of liking any Sonic Youth. Like,
it definitely feels like a band I'm way past the ship setting sail of me being interested.
Yeah.
Never had a phase early enough with Sonic Youth, and I've heard it so much of it across their discography that like I might get a little bit of enjoyment out of listening to a couple of their records like once, but there's nothing about it that really compels me to come back, which is like, it's probably one of our wrongest takes.
Yeah, I guess if we're
it's just like you're publicly admitting that you don't care about this massively influential band, but I just don't.
So
I don't know.
I think it's actually kind of funny. Regular listener, our Mad Bob Mystery Caller, he actually texted me one day because I think we said something on one of the bonus audios, maybe, and I'm listening or something like that. And he was just, maybe it was the birthday spanking episode. Because I think I said I would hate this kind of stuff more than just bad metalcore. But he was like, I think it's hilarious how much you hate Sonic Youth. And it's just like, I really don't like it. And I think it comes down to the vocals. Like, I'm such a vocals first music listener. And because both of them just sing with the most bored, disaffected, Gen X, monotone, flat vocal styling, that I cannot get into it. And everybody's like, it's about the riffs with this band and the guitar parts. It's like, yeah, I get that. It's probably why I don't get into Dinosaur Jr. either, because he's got a flat, Gen X, monotone, boring voice. And they're another band that's about the riffs. Like, I don't know. You could sing well too.
But the riffs, but the riffs with Dino Jr., I don't love Dino Jr. I've listened to a few of their records. I just haven't really connected with them in any significant way. But the riffs are doing much more of the heavy lifting than I feel like Sonic Youth is all of that experimental guitar stuff that I'm just like, this stuff can be cool if it's in the context of a better song. But yeah. Other 88 punk records. We looked at, in looking at the overall charts, we were like, 88, kind of a bad year.
Yeah.
And not just for rough. Punk. I think generally speaking, music it's the good stuff is few and far between.
I think the good stuff was the rap. I think rap, out of everything we looked at, was probably the most consistently good across the board.
Yeah. There's a handful of, there's a couple of great alt country records, but there's not a lot.
Yeah. Metal, there might have been a lot of metal that was worth looking at, but even then, it's so late into thrash and hair that it's not even the best period for that kind of stuff. More interesting for it
is one
stuff.
of the,
it's a transition period. I think it's a transition period for everything, every style of music at this point. Because even college rock this year felt kind of down, and this is kind of college rock peak, there's an REM record, but it's not the best period for that kind of stuff. I think it's an important year for the stuff that comes in the next 3 to 5 years, but not so much. That being said, probably one of the best records of the entire fucking year is Surfer Rosa by the Pixies. By Pixies. Not, there's no the, but you put it in a sentence, you're allowed to put a the there. But Surfer Rosa, we've said many, many times, our personal favorite Pixies record.
Yeah, that's the best one. It's not even a competition.
Yeah, love this record. I re-listened to it this week. Just just for fun, just because I can always listen to this record. It's one of those records that I can just listen to at any time. Like I don't need to be in a certain mood or anything like that. Like, oh yeah, Pixies, all right, I'll put that on. Sarfrosa, yeah. Doolittle, I need to be in a certain mood, but not Sarfrosa.
I think most everything else by them, it's a little more mood dependent. Isn't anything by My Bloody Valentine not important in the moment, but important in who it is.
Yeah, I don't think Isn't Anything is as big. It's definitely not as big as Loveless, but like I think this record is more popular thanks to Loveless.
Yeah,
like because I don't know how much shoegaze there even was by '88. There's not a lot from what I recall. Really. Just looking at that list,
there's a tiny bit of like baggy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Baggy's just starting during this time period too.
Yeah, even by like I don't know, you get like a Pale Sings EP in '89. There's really not anything else in '88. You know, the Ride demo is '89. So that is an important aspect of Isn't Anything. Like by the time Loveless hits and like shoegaze is in full swing, like you can kind of go back and be like, oh shit, well, they were doing this. They were already doing this like a good while before anyone else. You know, they had a full album, they had an EP, you know, they had a bunch of other stuff before anybody else was doing this. So it's like it's much more important when you look back, but it wasn't like, I don't think it was like a record that is singularly responsible for like everyone following, you know, copying them immediately after this record. Shoegaze definitely seems like one of those things that just came together in terms of, you know, it being that scene, all these bands in the same, playing in the same scene and playing shows, and all just kind of drawing from the same influences.
Definitely worth mentioning that the self-titled Fugazi EP came out this year. This is first, right? Like this predate any other singles. Like this is the first one. And it's a pretty substantial EP. Well, it's like a 10-inch. It's like 23 minutes long. Like it's a substantial little release there. And, you know, features Waiting Room, which like to this day is still one of the biggest Fugazi songs of all time, if not the biggest, the most popular Fugazi song of all time.
Yeah. I mean, they really didn't honestly, they never really did any singles.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking of Margin Walker and
I mean, that was another EP.
3 songs. Yeah, I guess you're right though. Like they don't have any just singles. The closest you get is probably 3 songs. But Margin Walker, how many tracks is on there?
That's like 5 songs.
Yeah.
6 songs.
So is that another 10-inch too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the first 2 things Fugazi did, you know, there's a reason they packaged them together as 13 songs. It's almost an album in its own right because they had so much to put out immediately.
Yeah, they hit the ground running. The Pogues, If I Should Fall, from Grace with God, which is it's not the first one. They have a couple, I think they have 2 more before. Yeah, they have 2 more before this one. Is this one the one with, this one's got Fairy Tale of New York on it. It's like track 4 on the record. And I'm like, why did you put your Christmas song in the like first 5 tracks of your LP? It's kind of an odd choice. It's an explicitly Christmas song too, right? Like they actually say the words Christmas in that song, I believe. It's just very weird to put in there and not like closer to the end of the album or something like that. We have the Sugar Cubes, Life's Too Good. Very much enjoy the Sugar Cubes records, the pre-Björk. I wish her stuff actually kind of sounded more like this.
Yeah.
That being said, I started like a listen through of Björk's records, and like I listened to Debut and I listened to Post, but I never did like go past that. And I really liked Post. I like songs on Debut. The whole album as a whole, it's a little too long and doesn't have enough going on, but Post I feel like is a much stronger front to back, and supposedly Homogenic's even better. So I should give that a listen to see what I think of her going forward, because I do really enjoy the Sugar Cubes record. So does this one have? It's got Motor Crash on it and Birthday. Yeah, Birthday was like one of the bigger songs. Does Grindcore Dylan like From Enslavement to Obliteration by Napalm Death?
It's a good record. It's before Barney takes over vocals, so it's still Lee. It's essentially the B-side lineup of Scum, but it sounds better. The songs are better.
Is Bill still in this one?
Yeah, Bill still plays guitar on this record. It's a good one. I don't love it. It has a sick fucking album cover, though.
Yeah, that cover's so cool.
It's not my favorite stuff by them, but it is a solid record. which I haven't picked back up on the Napalm Death discography. I should do that.
Yeah, I'll pick up where you left off.
Throw that in my rotation.
There's one here we've actually covered on the show before. That is Suffer by Bad Religion. We did that with Andrew Verdecchio of Five Iron Frenzy in one of our most chaotic episodes.
So you lost internet for like an hour.
Yeah, I lost internet in it, so we got cut off, and then it was a wild one. His son comes wandering in the middle of the recording. It's very fun. That was way back in episode 98, I guess, or 96, excuse me. And I'll go ahead and say the other ones we've covered. In episode 225, we covered Truth and Soul by Fishbone. Very much enjoyed that one. I believe that wasn't even Skagus. We just did that one because we like it. Then in episode 153, we covered Field Day by Dag Nasty. We did that with Scott of the band Totally Slow. And then way back in episode 28, we did Swizz and their self-titled album with Cringer's Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. So we haven't done 88 a ton of times.
No.
And we kind of know why.
Yeah. I mean, there's still, we should definitely do that Fugazi record at some point. We should definitely do. I would say, and this is getting a little bit outside of the punk world, but I think Starfish by The Church is a great record. I think that's one that could be good to talk about if we hit 88 again. Definitely, if I was picking from this year, one that I would consider. There's not a lot that I would consider. Like that Feelies record. Again, it's stuff that's pretty outside of punk. That stands out to me as the most interesting to talk about. We've talked about Gorilla Biscuits before, so I don't know how much there would be to say about the EP, but that's certainly like an important release from 88.
Yeah, like looking at it, if it was me selecting the album, I don't know what I would do, because it's like looking at everything that came out, it's not a great year. It's not a great year for punk. Like
Jettison by Naked Ray Gun would definitely be one to talk about, which we've talked about Naked Ray Gun, so it's like, how much more are we going to say? Maybe to do with a guest.
Maybe Prison Bound by Social Distortion.
That's definitely an important enough record to talk about.
Yeah.
There's enough of a story too.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's just not a great year though. Tough. It's a tough one. You wouldn't want to dig too deep, because you just would be like coming up kind of empty as far as I don't know who to discuss. Is that the Beat Happening record to do? Figure out what their deal is.
I don't know if I like Beat Happening.
Yeah, there's like a Bolt Thrower album in there. I mean, that's not really. That's more metal, I guess. But Rudimentary Peni,
Yeah.
Maybe, but that's not even the record by them,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's we got one of the Wire reunion records. A Bell is a Cup Until It's Struck, and then there's
kind of boring.
And there's like two Fall records.
Yeah.
The Friends Experiment and I Am a Curious Orange. Yeah. Even that No Means No record is like not one of the bigger No Means No records. Small Parts, Isolated and Destroyed. I feel like we've hit a lot of the really good records. I mean, I don't really care for Dead Moon or like Green River, but I guess those could be worth talking about as well. Yeah.
Yeah, they're important.
Right.
Yeah. There's the Comeback Suicide record. I guess you could talk about that. It's probably enough to talk about on that record.
I mean, even honestly, that Suicidal Tendencies is high on the list of considerations, just because it's like, it's kind of one of the well-known ones,
Yeah. It's
not like the biggest, but it's like up there. The first, first 5 seem to be the most well-known stuff by them. But yeah.
When if you think about the Stephen Blush, punk hardcore died in 86.
Yeah.
88's definitely a good case year to be like, oh, there's not much going on here.
Yeah, I think it is that might have been like what he was thinking of when he says that specifically too. Though
88 probably is like one of the leanest years for punk. Like with all of the subgenres that you have in play, there's not a lot in any of them.
Yeah, the buckets are very light. Yeah, I
because
feel like
89 you get a pretty substantial step towards like post-hardcore. Like there's big records to talk about in 89. There's and then shoegaze and related stuff too. Like 87 might be kind of lean. I feel like 87's been one we've looked at in the past and been like, it's really hard to pick here. Not too excited to talk about anything.
Yeah. Well, we should get into the actual album we're talking about today. So, out of all the options we were given, we had a lot to choose from. Dave gives you plenty of options whenever it's your turn, or whenever it's his turn to sponsor an episode. So, he gives a pretty hefty list, which I think we're going to work on maybe in the future as well. But out of the options he gave us, we selected Ourselves by 7 Seconds.
Still I couldn't find my way to sleep. I still way too much to think. When will this sound inside my head? Somehow it makes me cry. I find I'm looking for something, some fact or clue that helps me break a dizzy world, focusing straight. This time I'm not feeling so. This time I'm not feeling so. This time I'm not feeling so great.
Stats on the band. 7 Seconds were from Reno, Nevada. Are from Reno, Nevada. They formed in 1980, and this is the band's third full-length album. Released on Restless Records, the personnel on this album is Kevin Seconds on vocals, Bob Adams on guitar and vocals, Troy Mowat on drums, and Steve Youth on bass and piano. And the album was produced by John, gonna butcher this, Bacigalupi, and Brad Gilderman. Yeah, it's a very Italian name. Baccigalluppi. Bacigalupi? Yeah, don't know.
John Back.
Yeah.
13 credits. What else has he worked on? Some 7 Seconds.
Mostly, I think, just 7 Second stuff. Like, that's probably the most noteworthy things.
Amber Inn. Something by Sinker. He's got an engineering credit on Chick 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 or whatever. The 3 exclamation points band from 2004. Very little.
Yeah, not a ton. Because I went through the list and I was like, nothing I really felt like writing down.
Also mixed and produced by Brad Gilderman, who has quite a few more credits.
But even then, I don't think I saw a lot that I was like, gotta mention this, you know.
Assistant engineer on Hard Promises by Tom Petty.
Oh.
Assistant engineer on Under the Big Black Sky. A lot of assistant engineering. Some mixing. He mixed More Fun in the New World by X. A lot of pop credits in the 90s. Like a lot of R&B, like some TLC and Boys to Men and Brandy. A lot of mixing credits.
So I was looking up Restless Records because that name was like, what's this label? You know, what's their deal? It is a sub-label of Enigma Records. Good old Enigma Records, always showing up in the most random places. But
Restless did Land of the Lost by Wipers.
Yeah, as I say, in 1988, they also released Prison Bound by Social Distortion, Slippery When Ill by the Vandals, The Circle by the Wipers, and Agent 00 Soul by the Untouchables, and They Might Be Giants Lincoln. So,
okay.
Some of the better records of 1988, honestly.
Yeah. They start out with a Fear record in 85. Big Lizard in the Backyard by Dead Milkmen. So, yeah, it's quite a bit of some bigger name punk stuff, I guess, at the time period.
So, before we go too much further, Dave, as usual, whenever he sponsors an episode, he sent us a piece of audio to go along with this. So, let's hear it from Dave.
Okay, third time's the charm. Hopefully. I've tried hitting record and started talking a few times. Well, twice. And they sounded so cringe-inducing I had to stop. I probably should have saved that for bloopers, but that's way too much fucking trouble. What's up, posers? It's Dave Brown here. Going to talk about this Patreon-sponsored episode. Thank you for taking my $10. Money well spent. And I wanted to hear you talk about, well, a number of albums, because anytime I do this, which is always a few times a year, I send you guys like a list, a big old long list, broken down by decades with either 2 or 3 records to choose from each decade. Sorry for all the homework. This time around, you guys decided to go with 1988's Ourselves by 7 Seconds. Before I start talking about the record itself, I figured I would mention some of my other favorites of that year. But before I do, let me see if I've got this Rate Your Music thing figured out, right? So I go to the rateyourmusic.com gimmick, and I'm clicking on charts. So far, so good, eh? So then on the customized charts, I click on the drop down for the year, and I go down and I pick 1988. Good. Click close. And then we type in PUNK for punk. Click include. And then it has include as genre, influence, either. I'm picking either. And then we're going to go to update chart. But I'm pretty sure I remember you saying that you choose the popular drop-down, because there is another drop-down of top, popular, esoteric, diverse, and bottom. So top as determined by user ratings, and popular by most number of ratings. So we're going to go to popular, and let's update this chart here, see what we got here. So a couple quick pithy thoughts on the top 10. We got the Daydream Nation by the Sonic Youth. You know, I did a whole episode on Sonic Youth on One Band 5 songs. They're fine. That having been said, the best song they ever recorded, released, wrote is on Daydream Nation. It is Teenage Riot. It's fucking amazing. Next we have Surfer Rosa by the Pixies. I just did an episode on the Pixies recently. Not a fan of the Surfer Rosa. It's fine. I prefer Doolittle and Trompe Le Monde. Got the My Bloody Valentine here. Never listened to that one. Same with the Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Ooh, at number 5, though, we have the Pogues, If I Should Fall from Grace with God. Jesus Christ, I can't read today. I actually have heard this Pogues record. This Pogues record is really good. The title track is good. It also has their most famous song, the Christmas ditty that they did with Christy McCall, Fairy Tale of New York. Fucking brilliant song. God almighty. Okay, some band, well, the Sugar Cubes, then some band I can't pronounce, the Napalm Death, never listened to the Napalm Death, The Church, Carcass, and at number 11, Bad Religion Suffer. I'm kind of surprised it's not in the top 10. You know, it's a pretty interesting top 10, I guess. It's pretty stock stuff. I did the other day look through deeper into this set of charts, and I think I went to about the 10th page before I said screw it, this is getting boring, but it is still pretty interesting. I mean, other things in the top 20 include Bolt Thrower. I still don't know what the Bolt Thrower is. Butthole Surfers, Susie and the Banshees, Suicidal Tendencies, Happy Mondays. Ooh, hey, I'm doing a thing about Manchester, the whole dance scene. Well, it's not just dance, it's a thing. Anyway, over on my Patreon for the One Band 5 songs, we're doing a series of audio essays about Manchester and the dance beat in the Manchester music, and it was in Baggy and Grebo and all of these other things that have these names now that at the time, I guarantee you, were not thought of distinct scenes or subgenres or any of that shit. But how we got from there to Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's going to be like a 6-part series. So, hey, check that out. The first episode, the 0 episode, is up for free on my Patreon for everyone to listen to. So, other than that, I mean, this is an interesting top 10, or charts in general, and this was an interesting time. There was something... I have a real soft spot in my heart for those late 80s, early 90s up to Nirvana time period. Things were changing, and there were so many different and distinct styles just bubbling under the surface, and it was like no one knew what was gonna really catch on and go and become the next big thing. And as it turned out, it was what was called grunge, but that's a whole other story. So I should probably talk a little bit more about the record that I paid you to talk about. but I'm going to force you to hear my favorite records from 1988. We're going to do my top 5, starting at number 5, Vivid by Living Colour. Yes, this is the Cult of Personality record. Number 4, the record we're discussing today, Ourselves by 7 Seconds. Hopping in at number 3 is Field Day by Dag Nasty. Y'all covered this record before. This is a great record. Number 2, the debut from All Roy Says. And number 1, Rattle and Hum by U2. In my head, U2 and 7 Seconds are very, very connected. And I know I'm probably not the only one that sees this, especially with a record like Ourselves. But Kevin Seconds, in the liner notes of their final record with BYO Records, New Wind, which was really a transitional album when they were going from their straightforward hardcore punk beginnings and starting to move into something else, he mentions U2 and REM as influences. And you can definitely hear that. And that's the thing I think that gets lost by some people, is there's this middle period where their music really does change. They become kind of a chameleon. They do a lot of different styles. But the fact is, they were always melodic as hell. I mean, they were a band that had distinct Oi influences. There was definitely post-punk influences. I mean, their most famous song is a cover of 99 Red Balloons, for fuck's sake. What are we doing here, people? Of course, they've always had varied tastes. But the record we're discussing is their first album for Restless Records, and it's so good. So here's how I came to this record. First thing I ever heard from 7 Seconds was the aforementioned 99 Red Balloons cover. I heard that on a radio show out of Tampa, Florida. Every weeknight, it was called the Underground Circus. The show on Wednesdays was called Chuck Wagon. They focused on more underground stuff, and there was an episode of nothing but cover tunes. God, it was so good. Because you know me. You know I love me some cover tunes. And it was great. Holy moly. So I went out and I picked up Walk Together, Rock Together, the record that had that cover on it. And the next thing I found from them was a live album called Live 1+1. Now, this record came out in 1987, and it came out in between the Praise EP and the Ourselves album. They play a song from Ourselves, the Save Ourselves, which is kind of the title track de facto. This is one of my favorite live albums of all time. It's between that and the Descendants Liveage. I think they're fantastic. The Praise EP is really when things start to get into U2 territory. And something I literally just thought of today, as I'm recording this. Think about Minor Threat. And if you think about the direction Minor Threat was going, you listen to that Salad Days EP and hear where they were going. Imagine Minor Threat doesn't break up. And their next record sounds like a combination between what Dag Nasty ended up doing and what Embrace did. Would people have freaked out as bad as they did on 7 Seconds? Because 7 Seconds, changed their style. People flipped out. Dag Nasty on Field Day changed things up. People freaked out. I think it's pretty unfair. It's a natural progression. It is also, as far as the musicians are concerned, I'm sure sometimes playing the same shit over and over and over gets really boring. I mean, at some point, the Ramones had to get bored putting out the same record for as long as they did. Same with AC/DC. I've written a lot over the years about 7 Seconds on my Dopey blog. And in my review of their final album, Leave a Light On, which came out 10 years ago in 2014, I do give a pretty decent, I think, breakdown of the band's history and their 3 distinct periods. So you've got the early hardcore years, which were from 79 through 86. And then you've got 86 through, 92 95, basically, through 95-ish. And that's the middle years. And that starts with the Praise EP. And then goes into Ourselves, Soul Force Revolution, Out the Shizzy, and the music, The Message, which was on a major label. But that's a whole other story. And then in 1999, they put out Good to Go, and it was a return to hardcore. And pretty much everything after that falls in that vein. Leave a Light On. If you like Ourselves, I really suggest going and listening to Leave a Light On. Leave a Light On is one of those records that it's a best of with all new songs. They hit every aspect of their career. But I promise I'm going to get to the point at hand. Sorry, I'm rambling on. So with the Praise EP, that was the first record that the band had Bobby Adams join on guitar. From everything I've been able to tell about Mr. Adams, he has a lot of metal background. He's a hell of a guitar player. But the band at this point was Kevin Seconds on vocals, Steve Youth on bass, Dan... I can never pronounce your last name, sir. I am so sorry. You would think after this many... No, not Dan. Dan. What am I talking about? Troy Mout. M-O-W-A-T. Maybe edit that part out where I said Dan. Anyway, Troy on drums. And when Bobby joined the band, it was pretty much the lineup going forward, with the exception of Soul Force Revolution and the music, Our Message. The music, The Message. Jesus fucking Christ. It would help if I did more prep work before I just slap record. But yeah, that wouldn't be me. Who are we kidding here? Oh, Ourselves. This is, in my mind, this is 7 Seconds' big music album. Truly, the best track on here, I think, is the Save Ourselves. It's... As someone who got into this music through U2, as U2 was my gateway drug, hearing these songs and then getting Ourselves, I was like, oh yeah, this makes perfect freaking sense. And as much as I love Walk Together, Rock Together, and The Crew, though I don't think The Crew is their best record by any stretch of the imagination, there's something about this period, and especially Praise and Ourselves. And I know I'm talking a lot about Praise. I should have just had y'all do that record, but it is woefully out of print, not available on streaming. You can find rips of it on YouTube. It's only 4 songs. It's really worth listening to. And again, if you like Ourselves, you should listen to that. Okay, that's probably enough nonsense for me. So I am dying to hear what you guys think of this record, and thank you for everything you do on the show. And people need to go join the Patreon. We have a lot of fun over there in the Discord server, some great folks. And talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Well, thank you, Dave, for sending that over. We always appreciate hearing from you and sponsoring the episode, and always just a big booster of the show. We always appreciate the shout out. So thank you. Everyone, please go listen to One Band 5 Songs. He plugged 2 excellent episodes there, the Pixies episode and the one I'm blanking on what he said, but he said it.
Sonic Youth.
Thank you.
Which, thanks, Dave.
Yeah, you validated us.
Yeah, they're fine.
I don't really agree with your Surferosa's fine take there, but hey, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
But yeah, we always appreciate it. So I guess before we get into this record specifically, what we may have done this. We previously covered the band. We did the Socially Fucked Up demo.
Oh, yeah.
We did that with Josh Robbins on the same episode. We discussed the Stranglers Men in Black album in the old format, where it was an album and an EP. And I think we listened to it. We're like, it's a demo. It sounds like a demo. It's,
Yeah.
It's very rough, early hardcore demo. Like, it's just not, doesn't sound very good. And that was one of the things where I was like, we owe 7 Seconds an actual album, like one of their LPs. We need to cover something by them. And that is actually why I wanted to go with this one, is because when Dave sent that list, I was like, hey, a 7 Seconds record. And it's a record with a little bit of, what would you say?
A reputation.
Yeah, a reputation. A notorious record in their discography. We'll see if it's earned. But yeah, I was like, man, we need to do 7 Seconds. That's an interesting record to talk about. So I was like, okay, let's do that one. So what is your previous experience with 7 Seconds? Like, how much of them have you listened to before?
So my introduction to 7 Seconds should be the same as yours. You checked out a copy of Take It Back, Take It On, Take It Over, their 2005 record from the library.
Yeah.
Probably in like 2005 or 2006.
Yeah, around that time period.
It was right around the time where we were digging more into classic punk and hardcore and stuff. Really growing out of our Christian metalcore phase and getting way more into punk and other more extreme sides of metal, and definitely big into like the post metal stuff going on at that time. So 7 Seconds was a band that we would have maybe read their name somewhere, but the first thing I heard was definitely that 2005 record, it was kind of their final record. It was their final record for a while. Then they had a 2014 record, which Dave talked about. I want to say the Take It Back, Take It On liner notes definitely like talk about it as if it's like a farewell. Like I feel like it was very much a we're done. This is our last record for a while or forever, maybe kind of record. And I remember listening to it and enjoying it. I want to say, yeah, we probably ripped it to your computer, to your iTunes.
Yeah.
Checking out CDs from the library and ripping them to your iTunes.
Great way to get free music for a long time.
Yeah. And my memory of it was a decent melodic hardcore record. I feel like I've revisited that record in recent years, and I think it holds up. I think it's a solid record.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, we really didn't. It was kind of like, hey, this band is kind of a classic band. They're still around, or were still around up to that point. So it's kind of like interesting in that way, because there weren't a lot of bands that had that sort of longevity. And so 7 Seconds they really have been one of the few bands that have had a pretty long uninterrupted career from the original wave of hardcore, which I guess they're kind of like the second wave of hardcore. But we would have heard maybe some Kevin Seconds solo material, which is maybe not a great example.
The split with Matt Skiba famously starts with Tracy, I was your man. And then our group of friends, it turned into a joke of how quickly can you turn it off when Tracy starts. It's not even that the whole side is bad. It's just that Tracy was an annoying song.
But then for a really long time, I never really dug deeper into 7 Seconds. They seemed important in terms of longevity, but they never really, they were a Nevada band. So that's kind of also remarkable too. They're just kind of one of those isolated bands in a really, really small scene. But they didn't have any kind of regionality. They didn't have any like scene that they were a part of, which it makes it kind of more impressive to me now, like how long they lasted as a band. They certainly would have had to do a lot of long drives to come, play in California, play in other places. I don't know that the Reno scene was ever very big. But I didn't dig any deeper with them. It was just kind of like, yeah, that's a band that stuck around. And I definitely didn't hear any of their classic records until very recent years. I don't know why. They were never really pushed very hard by anyone. And then kind of as time goes on and like just picked up, more information about them and learned a little more of their story, like kind of realized that they had a string of records in the 80s that have this reputation of being really bad. Like, oh, they really lost their way. They stopped being a hardcore band. And so I guess just being kind of wary of those records for a really long time. But recently I listened to their 1989 record, Soul Force Revolution, as part of my calendar system. And I was like, oh, okay, let's check this out. This is one of the bad ones, quote unquote. And I listened to it and I didn't get what the hate was for. I was just like, this is a good record. Like, this is an enjoyable record from beginning to end. It's not like they went super soft or anything. Like, they definitely had still a fairly hard edge to it. Yeah, it's pretty melodic, and the guitar playing is a little more like new wavy, U2 big music influenced, post-punk influence. But it didn't strike me as being terrible or something to hate. Like, I was just like, yeah, this seems like it would have been a natural progression of what punk was doing at this time. And what Dave was talking about, if Minor Threat had continued and not broken up, and they were doing essentially what Embrace became, which is really kind of almost the same exact thing that 7 Seconds does. It's, hey, we're listening to U2 and we're listening to post-punk and we're listening to all this other stuff. Let's do that. And also mix that in with, our punk roots that we're coming from. Like, if Embrace was Minor Threat and Embrace wasn't a different band, I don't think that record would be remembered the way that it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because that's a different group of people, and yeah. If it was the same members, or maybe changed a couple of members but kept the the important ones and went in that, and Minor Threat had gone in that direction, yeah, I do think people would hate. To answer Dave's question, I do think people would hate not Minor Threat. I think they would be like, oh, that was a great band that totally blew it. They dropped, they changed their sound to be more commercial, which I guess that was the thing. That was the reasoning. It's the commercialization. They're just trying to appeal to mainstream music listeners. And I'm like, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's a shrewd, calculated, like, we got to get more melodic. We got to make it to the MTV generation. Like, we got to get on the radio with our music. Because I don't think they had expectations of doing that. I think they were just like, this is what we listen to, and this is what the new members of our band can contribute, because, there are different people playing on these records. It makes sense to me. And so, yeah, I don't know. I didn't think Soul Force Revolution was a bad record. So when I saw that Ourselves was the 7 Seconds record, I was like, okay, well, that's considered one of the bad ones, but I know that Soul Force is not a bad record, so I'm willing to wager that Ourselves is not a bad record either, and not deserving of the hate that it gets. But I've never had a substantial 7 Seconds interest or knowledge. It's been very recently that I've dug through their discography a little more.
The courage to speak, shown every sign. I learned to never waste our time. I taught to have an open. Why give me a heart when you won't let it be? So, and I'm not afraid. No, I still got hope. But now you tell me I belong. Do I stay and sing this same old? Why give me a key when you won't set me free? Oh!
of similar. Yeah, it just kind of became this band where it was like the joke was, oh, and then they put out New Wind and they sounded like U2 and they sucked. Like it was just this weird like hard turn on this band. And I do think you might be right. It might just be like going for more like melodic and like commercially appealing, but it's not really that commercially appealing. And also like the idea, Embrace was also like specifically referencing U2. Like they were listening to U2 when they started Embrace. Like that was one of the bands they were getting into. And you would never call out Ian MacKaye for being like, oh, he's just selling out, trying to sell down mainstream. It's like Ian MacKaye, the $5, you never make a merch band. You know, like, no, you can't. You cannot call this selling out. And 7 Seconds are very heavily modeled off of Minor Threat. And like, if you look at their career, it kind of mirrors the Ian MacKaye career to a point. Like Minor Threat starts straight edge, is more of just a thing. It's not really like an actual like lifestyle, but I think it feels like 7 Seconds kind of turned it. Like they became like the first disciples. And I mean, I'm sure there's people in DC who are doing it really before 7 Seconds, but like as far as like a band who was like, we are also straight edge. Are you a straight edge like me? As the famous quote from Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. Like 7 Seconds were one of the first bands after Minor Threat to claim straight edge, and who then in turn became a huge influence on the Youth Crew scene. Like their record The Crew is like it came out in 84, and then like Youth of Today's first record's what, Break Down the Walls is 86 or something like that. Like it's not that long after. So like they were also a very big influence on the next wave of straight edge, which is the Youth Crew stuff. But if you trace like the sonic similarities, like, you know, the last Minor Threat record, there's some more melodic stuff on there than was on the previous stuff. They get more melodic with like Walk Together, Rock Together. And then, yeah, Embrace sounds a lot like this album. Like there's a lot in this record that sounds very similar to the Embrace record. So like what they do after is very different, I guess. Like that's where they diverge a lot more. But yeah, it doesn't feel like them trying to sell out. Like they do eventually get on a major label, but that's not until like the mid 90s when everybody was getting scooped up too. So like that's not even in the same conversation. And so yeah, 7 Seconds, you're right, we're never a band that I necessarily had like a big connection to. I listened to more of their stuff over recent years. I still don't think I've listened to The Crew. Like I know what it is. I think that's why I've never listened to The Crew, because it's just like I don't listen to that kind of hardcore anymore.
Yeah.
Like I've grown past that, so like I'm just so over that style of hardcore.
Yeah, like you don't go listen to Minor Threat. Like we loved Minor Threat as teenagers, but like how often do you go back and listen to that? Like it only has so much mileage, and it's like, yes, it was really important and it was really influential, and I'm really glad that I listened to it as much as I did as a teenager, but I don't really need to hear it now.
Yeah, like I go to Fugazi and Embrace far more than I ever go to Minor Threat, because there's a lot more going on interesting that I just find. So yeah, it's definitely.
So I have listened to The Crew.
Mm-hmm.
What I did, we were gonna record this last week until I got sick.
Yeah,
and we just like decided to not.
It was
you
funny.
Asked me like Wednesday, and I was like, well, I haven't listened to the record yet.
So it was funny because like you told me you had COVID on like Monday or something like that. Or you maybe posted in the Discord, and I was like, oh, okay, well, we might record. We got to Wednesday, and I texted you kind of early in the day, and like you didn't respond for at least 6 hours. It was definitely the evening when you responded. I was like, he probably slept all day, and in that time, I was like, I better make some notes in case you come back and be like, yeah, let's do it. Or I remember when I had COVID, we didn't record because you don't feel like it.
You just don't want to.
You're just tired. That's really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it was Monday was like really hit me really hard and like built into like a really bad sinus headache, like one of the worst headaches I've ever had. And then like once that like medicine kicked in and it broke, it was like, okay, I feel okay. Like this just feels like a cold. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'm not going to go to work the next day. Maybe I can make it in Wednesday. And then it was just kind of like they had went ahead and filled in my schedule and covered, my Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that I was scheduled. And it was just like, maybe today I'll muster the strength. And then I'm just like kind of like getting closer to noon. And I'm like, am I going am I going to tell them I'm going to come in, or am I just going to take the day? Like, I'm just like, I never take off work, and I'm going to have to wear a mask. I'm going to still feel kind of shitty, and just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. It's like the psychological impact is so much more than what I like actually dealt with, like symptom wise, though it definitely was like an extra shitty cold kind of symptoms for a while. But it's just that, like, not even fatigue. Like, I didn't even have, like, I definitely would get, like, when I went back to work Friday, I definitely got winded pretty easily. Like, it would hit you if you started to, like, try to power through it. But, like, generally sitting around the house, I was just like, it's fine. Like, I don't feel, like, excessively tired. I just don't feel like doing anything.
Yeah.
Because you know what you have, and you know you can't do anything, and you can't go anywhere. You don't want to go anywhere. And it's just like, I'm just going to sit around and watch TV, eat ramen, you know, take a nap, play Goblins and Gold or whatever on my phone. Just read if I can, you know, am alert enough. So yeah, but like Wednesday when I probably saw your message in the morning, and then I was like, I should listen to that record. I just didn't want to listen to anything.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I didn't listen to shit all that week. Like, for some reason, listening to music, watching TV feels so much more passive.
Yeah.
Like, listening to music, if I tried to do it passively and I wasn't like actively listening to it, I wouldn't get anything out of it. Like, TV, you can watch and kind of get something out of it without paying super hard attention to it. But with music, it'll just go in one ear and out the other. So it's like, I need to listen to this record when I'm actually going to be able to pay attention to it. So I was just like, I put it off. But Monday, like, it was like I woke up that morning with just sinus crud. I was like, this cold that I've had is coming back. And I kind of laid around and I took a shower, and then I was going to like leave. I was going to go do something. And it's like, I was like shoes on, keys in my hand, about to go out the door. And I'm like, I feel worse.
Between like getting up and
it's like getting up, taking a shower, trying to get ready, trying to go. I was like, I feel like a force field is in front of the door. Like, I was like, wow, why do I feel so much worse now? I'm starting to get kind of achy. Like, I don't think I want to go out today. And so like I sat down on the computer and I tried to work on something, you know, related to why I was going to go out, trying to work on this small claims case against our landlord. And so then like it's like, all right, I'm going to listen to some stuff and do the dishes. And then like by the time I had done the dishes and listened to something, I was like, oh, like that's when it hit me. So what I did was I listened to The Crew on Monday because I decided, I was like, all right, I probably have enough time to listen to everything leading up to the record that we're going to talk about. And I felt like 7 Seconds, it's an important band. I want to know a little more about their discography, and I want to see the trajectory because I knew what they sounded like early and I knew what Soul Force Revolution sounded like, and I wanted to see that transition happen, and I wanted to, you know, see if it feels really jarring and drastic. So I listened to The Crew that Monday, and then I didn't do anything for like a week, and then when I picked back up and I did listen. So I've listened to The Crew, I listened to Walk Together, Rock Together, I listened to New Wind, I listened to Ourselves in preparation for this episode. The Crew is fine. It's a decent record. It's a classic melodic hardcore record. You know, I think that they are that really important step in between Minor Threat to Youth of Today, Gorilla Biscuits, you know, and Youth Crew and melodic hardcore. And it's kind of funny, like listening to The Crew and being like, you know, it's a melodic hardcore record, but that's where pop punk comes from.
Yeah, what, them and Descendants? Yeah.
Yeah, like so it's kind of like listening to The Crew, and I'm like, you know, I hear this influence on Lifetime.
Yeah.
Like you can see those steps in the progression of melodic hardcore, and in the ways that it has like kind of cross-pollinated with pop punk and changed over time to become the melodic hardcore into the 2000s. Like there still is something essential, you know, that goes all the way back to Minor Threat. And 7 Seconds is definitely a really big part of that. So it was cool to listen to the record. I think it's a good record. I don't love it. There's nothing on it that I'm like really into. There's not like any really like individual songs that stand out as being super interesting to me. I kind of felt the same way about Walk Together, Rock Together, though it feels a little more solid. But Walk Together, Rock Together also has like a big chunk of it that's like live recordings at the end.
Yeah, it's technically an EP with like bonus material as an LP. Yeah. So that leads up to where I get to, because I do my sandwiching. That's my new thing. Like I listen to the record and then I listen to records on either side of the record just to see where they came from, where they went, just to give you an idea. And so I listened to New Wind and I was like, why was this album considered a punchline? Because I think New Wind is great. I think it's a really fun record. Yes, it's a little more melodic and maybe less hardcore, but it's still like a really good record and really catchy stuff. And just, yeah, I was just like, all the hardcore dorks from the early 80s they're just wrong. And I feel like the people who are like Cro-Mags, Agnostic Front, all that kind of New York hardcore, that's the real hardcore. That's the real stuff. And so anything else that's like kind of melodic or kind of just like different, because they even hate they hated a lot of the hardcore bands who turned into thrash bands. They're like, well, that's not hardcore, even though like Agnostic Front like straight up does that. But Agnostic Front gets a pass, I guess, because they're a fucking New York hardcore band originally. Whatever. And SSD did it too. SSD did a fucking hair metal record. Yeah. And like, but everybody's like, no, they're tough guy hardcore. You know, like that. I don't know why they hate it, but like because 7 Seconds did it. Oh, they sold out. It's crap. It's a bad record. It's like no good. It's like, I think it's better than The Crew. I think New Wind is better than The Crew.
I think New Wind had some issues for me. It was a good record. It's fine. It has some significant flaws. I mean, the Colorblind jam at the end is like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, that's
like horrible. A Yellow song.
It's the end of the record too, though. I was just like, what the fuck? It is like a Yellow. That's what I thought when I heard that too. It's like, oh, weird.
But like they've said, like they were known for doing that 99 Red Balloons cover. They were always super catchy. The Crew is extremely catchy. Yeah. Like it's not super hard. Like it's fast downstroke kind of hardcore, like riff wise, but melodic. Vocally, it's very melodic. Like from the beginning, they were always trying to sing melodies over hardcore. So I think the guitars change and the songs get a little more rhythmically complex, and like the bass playing is pretty pronounced from the beginning. Like it is definitely like that busy fast punk bass playing kind of from the get-go. But it, like, going from Walk Together, Rock Together to New Wind was not a jarring transition at all.
Right. And people like new Walk Together, Rock Together.
Yeah. Like it felt like a pretty natural progression. So much so that like if you went from The Crew to New Wind, it still doesn't feel like that big of a jump. So I don't understand the 7 Seconds hate. Yeah. I mean plenty of bands, I guess, like did change their sound.
Yeah. They broke up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened. They either broke up or they changed their sound, because you can't play the same fucking like downstroke. The reason why American hardcore sounds the way it does is because of the limitations of the people playing the music. They all just picked up guitars and started playing, like with the exception of a handful of other people. And they were already the ones who were outliers to begin with. You were like, wow, they're a really good guitar player for this style of music. So like your, East Bay Rays and like your Billy Zooms, like, those people who already were like already guitar players before hardcore. So, but then the rest of the hardcore bands that are just like, yeah, we just play like that fast thing, and like we all have the same beats in all of our songs, and our tempos are the same in all the songs, and the rhythm and the guitar is all exactly the same. It gets boring, and that's why they all changed and why they all became something different.
Yeah.
That's why 7 Seconds changed and became something different. It's just like,
but I think what is interesting to me is that 7 Seconds does seem to have a bit of a worse reputation for how their sound changed.
Yeah.
that is not exactly, that's not really consistent with how much they actually changed.
Yeah.
Like it's like they're made out to have like changed so much more than they actually did. Because I don't think they changed that much.
Right.
Like New Wind is definitely still a melodic hardcore record. And the record that we're talking about ourselves, like I would still call it a melodic hardcore record. It's getting further into alternative, it's alternative rock and post-hardcore. But the thing about ourselves, there's a lot, and even some of New Wind, like there's a lot of what they're doing that reminds me of Husker Du.
Oh yeah, I can see that
Of
too.
late period Husker Du, like especially ourselves. Like I'm like, people love alternative rock Husker Du.
Yeah.
Why aren't those people listening to 7 Seconds?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I think they'd enjoy it. I enjoyed it. I mean, the things that I enjoyed about ourselves are very similar to the things that I enjoy about that period of Husker Du and Embrace and Dag. Like,
yeah.
I enjoyed ourselves. I think I like ourselves of the records I've heard by them. I think I like ourselves the most.
Please believe me, I'm on your side. Though I know I can't feel what you feel, can't see what you see. But my respect and love is deeper than you'll ever really know. And I know it may be hard for me to ever really show what's here inside. Friends, sisters, see, through hungry times we see the most. You're my family. I thank you for the time you chose. Be part of my life. Help me fight against our pain. See you on the other side. It never matters.
Yeah, so like first listen through, I'd never listened to Ourselves before. I'd never heard it before. Just because there's a lot of 7 Seconds records and I haven't heard most of them. And I might have listened to the most 7 Seconds this week that wasn't just that one, the 2000s record. And I never was like, well, I'll start with Ourselves. Like, it doesn't seem like the one to start with. But like, I put it on and immediately I'm like, this is a good record. Why did everyone act like the sky fell? Like it was the worst thing in the world for them to go more melodic in a band who, like you said, was already fairly melodic for a hardcore band. Like, I listened to it and I was like, this is good. It reminds me of Embrace. Like, I straight up thought of Embrace when I listened to this. And then I was like, Dag Nasty's in there too. I hear the Husker Du that you mentioned. Like, it's not that different.
Yeah, if 7 Seconds had started sounding like this and they were from DC, they would be a Revolution Summer band. Like, they would be pretty well regarded classic emo core band.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It is.
because they started as a hardcore band, as a straight edge hardcore band, maybe that's the straight edge expectation. He's like, no, we must all think alike.
Yeah.
We must copy Minor Threat.
Forever. It's like, but Minor Threat doesn't even sound like they're not even a thing anymore.
Yeah.
And they never were a thing ever again. That's the other funny thing about it. It's just like Minor Threat broke up and never came back and probably never will.
Yeah.
Like,
They can't. Ian MacKaye will never reunite a band.
no,
He never has. None of them have.
that's true. And none of them have reunited. There's the ones that like just take really long times between records.
Yeah.
Like the Events, but that's him and his wife. So they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, listening to the record, I was like, people just parroting bad things. Like, we talked about this on the Black Flag My War episode. It's just like people just parrot the same fucking ideas over and over and over again. Like,
And punk has been really bad for that for a really long time. Like, there just became a consensus opinion from loudmouths immediately at a certain point, and then they just tell everyone that forever. Like, oh, don't listen to that one, it sucks. So they don't. Like, people just don't listen to it. They don't challenge it and judge it for themselves. This is, Ourselves is a good record. Soul Force Revolution is a good record. I like alternative chunky riff 7 Seconds more than I like hardcore 7 Seconds.
yeah, I'd agree with that. I think everything from New Wind, Soul Force Revolution. I haven't listened to Out the Shizzy. I don't know if that sounds like.
Yeah, I didn't get that far, but
like the 380s records, I guess Soul Force Revolution. Yeah, whenever that one came out. But those 3 records, I was like, much better. I like this more than just like the straight ahead hardcore stuff. I like Take It On a lot too. I think it's a fun record, but like I don't know. I still think I would rather pick these 3 records before I'd pick Take It On. Like, it's a good kind of, it takes that original hardcore formula and like kind of ups it to the modern day, and it's not like just the most repetitive like downstroke guitar thing. Like, they are still who they are, and they have progressed as musicians. So like, you know, they're not going to revert their skill just because they're like, well, we're doing an old school record, so we got to do it, play it old school too. But yeah, I think this is better. It's more interesting. It's more varied. There's a lot more dynamics. My biggest issue with this record is the production, but that's just pure late 80s production that I have a problem with most bands from this time period for this very same reason. Just that gated drums and the reverb and the
everything's a little too big and the guitars get kind of flattened, and
the bass is non-existent, and like it takes some of the nuance and like dynamics out of the guitar work too. It's just like a very like kind of crunchy sound, and that's it. But you could tell that the songwriting is there, you know, like these are really well written songs, and like each song sounds different, you know, with the exception of the production. Like, they still sound different. They're playing differently. He's singing different melodies. Like, he's not just doing the same thing over and over again. So like, that's another like plus in the win column. It's just like, it's so much more interesting than just straight ahead hardcore. So like, it's just fully, this is, according to Rate Your Music, it's still the lowest rated album in their discography. It has a 2.76. And it's just like, why? This is very dumb. And it's just people parroting it again, like over and over again. Like, New Wind has a 3.01. And I think Soul Force Revolution has like a 2.8 something. You know, it's not great, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely, this period of 7 Seconds discography it's not getting the right listeners. It's not getting the right audience. It's because they're a straight edge hardcore band. It's only a lot of people that would be interested in hearing music that sounds like this are probably not interested in going to listen to a 7 Seconds record, because they're like, oh yeah, I know what Youth of Today sounds like. I know what Minor Threat sounds like. Like, I don't need more of that. And they might go listen to The Crew and they're like, yep, 7 Seconds, that's what they are. And they're just not going to they're not going to go further with the band, and they're not seeing that there's a more sophisticated approach to songwriting and arrangement and guitar playing in this band. Like, the only people, I don't know, I guess the only people that are coming across 7 Seconds records anymore, or really ever for a long time, have just been punks. And it's usually the kind of people who have a really narrow definition of what punk is.
Mm-hmm.
If it gets too melodic, then they're not interested, and they want it to be scabby and dirty and gross.
Yeah, it feels like the people who go listen to 7 Seconds are the people who are either just getting into this era of music for the first time and like really just kind of discovering everything around the same period, or it's the people who just were like, came up on this kind of stuff and then stopped. Like, yeah, you're right, they just have this like, this is the end of the line of what punk and hardcore is supposed to sound like. They don't listen to like the later stuff. They're the kind of people who are like, I don't like Fugazi, you know, those kind of people. Like, just like, I liked them better when they were Minor Threat. Like, I mean, it's fine to have an opinion that you just prefer something, you know, over another, but like, when it's more an identity and more of a just like, you're following the tenets of old school hardcore. Like, old school hardcore is boring. Like, after you've heard all of it or most of it, it gets old.
Yeah, the ones you end up coming back to for, you know, the rest of your life are like the Minutemen and Husker Du. You know, the ones that are so far on the edge of hardcore anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Dead Kennedys even like have more to come back to, because it's like, yeah, they're drawing on surf and country and
yeah,
I don't know, there's just something else that's there. It's not just a guy who barely knows how to play the guitar, like, and then some guy who's like really good at bass for some reason.
There's always, well, it's because it's like whoever decided to pick up the bass first, I think they are like, I'm gonna figure this out. Like, they want to figure it out. Like, instead of being like, I want to be the guitar player. Like, nah, if you're going to the bass first, you're either the most limited and like uninterested in developing and you're just like, I just want to be in a band. and just want
Yeah.
to play the bass, or you're like, no, I'm gonna get good at this weird instrument
Yeah.
that's like hard to get good at. You know, like, you can be competent. It's easy to get competent in bass. That's what it is. With bass, it's very easy to get passable. Like,
Yeah.
what's the root?
I played the
Gotcha.
root. Yeah.
Yeah. You need it to beef up the sound. It's required. You need it. But to get really good at it, it's very hard. Like, I think it's probably easier to get really good at guitar than it is to get really good at bass. Just because it's so weird. It's like a weird.
There's not like a really notable intermediate period of bass playing like there is with guitar. Like you can get to kind of like the intermediate level and play a lot of stuff.
Mm.
Like you can do, and you can always just kind of like slow things down a little bit too. And because the song's tempo is going to be based on what you can play. Because the drummer and the bass player are always going to be faster than you.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
guitarist is going to be like, I'm the main melodic instrument in the band. Like I'm playing the full chord. So like what I can do is going to dictate what everybody else gets to do.
Whereas, like, if you're the
With-
bass player, it's like you're not dictating anything. Like,
Yeah.
you might be helping the tempo, and that's it. But
What an intermediate bass player is doing, no one is going to notice.
right, there's not like, oh, that's an interesting bass riff. Like, nobody does that. You go
Yeah.
listen to that bass player because of what they're doing the whole song.
Yeah.
It's not like a, oh, I like that little piece they did. No, you either like the whole thing or none of it. You know. Yeah, listening to this record, I was just like, I even wrote it on the second note, Faraway Friends, kind of Rev Summer riff.
Yeah.
Like,
So much of this record sounds like Embrace
yeah.
with a
Like, there's
different
a little-
vocalist.
If I Abide has like a kind of a surfy part to it, is what I wrote. Wish I Could Help has like a Dag Nasty style riff to it. Sleep is that instrumental song that was like a tribute in memory to Robin S. Schumacher. I was like, is this a reggae song? Like, I was like, oh, they heard some early. I mean, Embrace, I guess, has a little bit of it, but like maybe they knew what was coming with like Fugazi, like playing around with some reggae in there too.
Or maybe they're listening to a lot of Pretenders or something. I don't know. There's definitely like a Pretenders-y, chorus-y guitar sound
Yeah.
all over this record.
My note for Sister, I think, is my favorite song on the record. I think Sister's the best song. It's
Yeah.
the one right after the instrumental. I was just like, man, this song rules. And then I saw a couple places online where people were talking about like, what are some non-traditional punk records that you like? And like, they're like Reddit threads usually. And then there was always be somebody who brings up Ourselves, and they're like, the song Sister's amazing. Like, so it has fans too. Like, that's the funny thing. It's like the kind of record where it's like, if you love a whole band's discography, or most of it, I could see a lot of people being like, I really like this middle period the most, just because it provides so much different, so much more to it, you know?
What is interesting? Something interesting with 7 Seconds. When you look at their Spotify and you look at their popular songs,
Mhm.
it's like all Take It Back, Take It On, and Good to Go. Like the 2005 and the 1999 record, and then like one song from The Crew. So 7 Seconds going back to basics is probably more popular than anything they've ever done.
I will challenge you. This might be a case of old Spotify or old Last.fm formatting, because if you do 7 space seconds and 7 seconds one word, you get different stats.
Yeah. I mean, well, this is the Spotify. I didn't look at the
Okay.
the Last FM.
Yeah, okay. So even on Spotify, that
But yeah,
Take
the
it-
Spotify.
because
7
I thought
Seconds
that
stuff.
was a Last.fm like recent, like when Last.fm was most popular was when those records were coming out. So that's why a lot of those like between 2000 and 2009 are like the most listened to albums on Spotify. It's because of when they came out and when people were using it. So even on Last.fm, the number one song is Sooner or Later, which is off Good to Go. Which is it because The Crew wasn't available for a long time on streaming?
Maybe
And it might have just been like all you could get was Take It Back.
Rust Edition. I don't.
There's two versions. There's the Trust Edition, and then there's another one with like extra tracks on it, with like live tracks on it.
Hmm.
That's also from Trust, so I don't know. There's like two editions there. Yeah, I don't know. The Spotify on 7 Seconds is weird and kind of a mess. But if you do go to Last.fm, I do think it is the same thing. I think it does say Take It Back is like the more listened to stuff. So I don't know what that's about, why that happened, but
I mean, if you look at their fans, also like it's Dag Nasty, it's Youth of Today, it's Gorilla Biscuits, Civ, Uniform Choice, Judge.
yeah, okay. So if you look at the top tracks all time, 7 Seconds, it's like Walk Together tracks and the Crew tracks, and then take it back. Like that's what the top 10 is. Like it takes to number 17 till you get a song off Soulforce Revolution. Yeah, the U2 thing. Constantly seeing comparisons to U2. Dave mentioned it too in his recording he sent us. I don't really hear it other than it's melodic, more melodic. Big, I guess he called this their big music record, and I could see that. It is very big, but like the guitar work is nothing like U2. U2 is very much like plucked, individual strings, and like this is all strum, like chords stuff.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it in song, like the scope of the songs,
the structure of the song,
of the songs,
the feeling of the song, I guess, is there.
Yeah, the kinds of melody. It's definitely not as much trying to copy the Edge's guitar style. Yeah. They're not doing the dominate,
or
delay
Bono
sounds
vocally.
Yeah, and he doesn't sound like Bono. But yeah, it is. It is an overt reference. Like they specifically name it as an influence.
I think that goes to show, like, I think now, like, looking at U2 now, you kind of forget how massive that band really was. Like, they were so big to the point that, like, even punks are like, I like U2.
Yeah.
Like, people weren't like, U2 are a bunch of sellouts. Like, nobody ever says that,
Yeah. I mean, I guess it helped that they were politically outspoken.
True. Yeah. True.
That would definitely appeal to 7 Seconds. Like they're a very politically minded band. Like they sing a lot of songs about anti-racism, like very specifically. That definitely see the appeal of U2 to a lot of that kind of punk,
especially that era of U2 as well. And U2 came from punk music. They were a UK punk band first. But even in that very first U2 record, they still sound like U2. It's like the things that made them who they were. I guess that they were like the next step past like the Clash, that kind of.
I think a lot of other than like the bands that were doing the full on big music sound, Big Country and The Alarm, those bands that were really just kind of in the same scene, like. The influence of U2 was much broader. It wasn't as much trying to imitate specific elements and much more just like the sensibility, the big picture. It's the Christian worship guitarist that did the direct ripoffs of U2.
Yeah, and I think that's why. Well, growing up, before, what is that record called? All You Can't Leave Behind, or whatever that record's called. Before that, like all the U2 that was before that, they were just always kind of just a band. Like, they're just there for me. Like, they weren't like a band I was super into, but I also wasn't like, oh, turn this off. Like nothing like that at all. That record comes out, like 99, 2000, whenever.
2000,
Yeah, 2000. And then 9/11 happens, and then it just becomes like, oh my God, this record's never going away. Like, it just kept, that record. I didn't like the songs off that record, and it got overplayed to death. And then we went to a Christian college where like they were like the one like mainstream rock band that was like, and they're Christian, like. So like you got that shoved down. I think that's just our personal like, oh God.
And culturally.
Everyone decided Bono needed to shut up.
Yeah, Bono got, was just
a little preachy.
Talked a lot, so Bono just did what he'd always been doing. It's just he had a lot of attention. Then people.
Yeah, I don't think their politics have like changed that much. I don't think they're drastically different. I don't think they took a right turn in any way. Like they've just consistently kind of banged on the same drums they've always banged on.
But then we get like Coldplay also. Just like
Snow Patrol.
We get the Snow Patrol, the Coldplay, post Britpop, wave of music too that feels of a piece with that era of U2.
Yeah,
and just like really getting really overplayed.
And the thing that everybody was so mad about, you put that album on our phones without asking.
Yeah,
like, which I've heard some people are like, it's actually not that bad of an album. It was just like people were like, I didn't want this. You're taking up space on my phone. There's limited space on this thing.
This is gonna autoplay every time I get in my car.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, just thinking about U2 in like the 80s and early 90s, I guess before like all the like before they have their crisis of like, what are we? We need to like figure something out, like the Zooropa, like that kind of era of U2 where they're just like, we got to change with the times. It's weird, but
Let me steal this Chapter House riff.
yeah, just to me, it's just like so many punks who love and appreciate U2 from that specifically the 80s period. It's just like, it feels kind of incongruous to like what we think of punks. And we're like, what? Like patches and chains and mohawks? Y'all like U2? Just seems odd. When it's just like they wrote catchy tunes and they had good politics. So it was just like, oh, that's really what it is. But yeah. And it was like a big band that like you could like and everybody kind of liked. There is something to be said about being like, this band is really good and they're very popular. And I can share this with people and they go, this is cool. I like this. Or I already like this band. You know, little monoculture in there. You know?
It's one of those pieces of mainstream culture that you're like, all right, I can enjoy this.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I can listen to this with people who don't want to listen to hardcore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Overall, though, like I just think it's a good album, and it's a shame that it has the reputation that it has because it's well written songs by a band choosing to. I mean, they could have course corrected. You know, they put out new Wind, and then they continued. Like they didn't like, oh shit, turn around. Let's make a crossover thrash record then instead. You know, they could have gone that way, but they're like, no, this is what we want to make. And so there is that, you know, they followed their own creative desires as songwriters and artistic integrity, just to keep going instead of just churning out the same thing over and over again that would have left them unfulfilled or even breaking up. I wonder if it's a case of like, if they broke up and started as a new name, if people would have freaked out as much as they did.
Yeah.
Like, with Embrace.
That's what I think. Like with Embrace, like people love Embrace. Like that's from the beginning, you know, that's been well appreciated. And I mean, it was part of a whole scene that was also doing kind of the same stuff, similar things. And it was also really short lived, but
yeah, a very specific time period. Yeah.
Yeah. If 7 Seconds if it was a different band with key members, I think that historically this period of their career would be better received. People would have been like, okay, it's the same people or some of the same people, but it's a new band and they're clearly going in a new direction, which I mean, they called the record New Wind.
Right. There's a new wind coming through. The change is inevitable with that kind of a name. Yeah.
But yeah, Ourselves really, I enjoyed the record overall. I think it really doesn't have any significant low points. And the instrumental song is kind of whatever, but it's fine. Like overall, yeah, it has a good bit of variety, but with like a good uniform sound. I think the production is right for what it is. I don't, you know, it's not a production style that I would choose, but I think it doesn't really do that much to detract from the songs.
I think you can mix it slightly.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder if this record's ever been like truly remixed. I know there's a remaster because they did a reissue with Soul Force Revolution. It's like both records in one. But I wonder if it's been like truly like remixed. Even if it's possible at this point, you know. But
right, because they might not have the tapes.
Right.
The multi-tracks.
I do wonder if a remix of this record could make some of what's being done guitar wise like stand out a little more, or even the bass kind of stand out a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, it's mostly just scale back the reverb.
Yeah.
On everything and bring up the bass a little more. Probably, you know, maybe compress the guitars a little more so they're a little more up front.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But I don't think it's a terrible mix. I don't think it's I don't know. People complain about the Husker Du records, and I think they sound as good as you're going to get. Like, I don't know. It's fine. You still hear the song.
Yeah. I mean,
it's doing what it needs to do.
But yeah, I think this was a success. I think, is Dave batting 100 or whatever it is? 500, whatever. What's the number in math in baseball? 1,000? Batting 1,000? Is that what it is? I don't know. 300 is pretty good, but that only means like 30% of the time. So it's got to be 1,000. Batting 1,000 with these sponsored episodes.
I think this was a good pick.
It is, and
it's a record that I think deserved to be talked about, and no one else would really pick it.
right. That's not the kind of record, unless it's like a diehard fan of the album in particular.
And like if we were to pick a 7 seconds, like, oh, we need to do a 7 seconds record, like we might look at this and be like, is that one? We wouldn't have someone vouching for it to say like you should listen to this record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess if we went off of just like
we would have done The Crew. We would have done
The Crew. Yeah, The Crew's probably what we would have
the 99 record. Something that's popular.
Yeah. Well, I think that will do it for us. So, let's give it a rating. What do you want to give it?
I think it's probably like a 3.75. I think it's a really solid record. There's not a lot that I like jumps out as like great songs, so it feels very uniform beginning to end, but I've enjoyed it the most out of their discography that I've heard.
Yeah, it's one of those like 3.75 feels like it's underselling it, but I'm not quite ready to give it like a 4. But 3.75 is kind of where I'm at.
It's something I could see growing in appreciation if I spend more time with it and come back to it.
Yeah. Good record though. So thank you all so much for listening, and you can follow us on all forms of social media: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Punk Lotto Pod. Everything at Punk Lotto Pod. We'll spell a line to it, 2688 Punk and punklautopod@gmail.com. So the big stuff. We appreciate you all, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores. To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.